Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. In my last video, I talked about mortgage rates and specifically what can impact the changes in mortgage rates. And what I want to talk about today is the presidential election. No, I'm not going to ask about your who you're going to vote for or what side of the aisle you sit on. What I want to talk about specifically is presidential elections and their impact on the housing market. So buckle up, let's take a look. So the question we want to talk about today is, do elections impact the housing market? The 2024 presidential election is just months away. As someone who's thinking about potentially buying or selling a home, you are probably curious about what effect, if any, the election has on the housing market. It's a great question because buying or selling a home is a major decision. And it's natural to wonder how such a big event, a major event, could impact your plans. Historically, presidential elections have only had a small or temporary impact on the housing market. So here's the latest on exactly what's happened to home sales, prices, and mortgage rates throughout those time periods. And please note, while this channel is specifically about life in Arizona, I am going to be talking about national trends for home sales, national trends for home prices in relation to presidential elections. So home sales. So during the month of November, in years where we've had a presidential election take place, there has been a typical slight slowdown in home sales. According to Ali Wolf, who is the chief economist at Zonda, she said that usually home sales are unchanged compared to a non-election year, with the exception being in November. In an election year, November is considered slower than normal. This is mostly because some people feel uncertain and hesitant about making big decisions during such a pivotal time. However, it's important to know this slowdown is temporary. Historically, home sales bounce back in December and continue to rise the following year. So in fact, let me show you some data from the HUD department, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and the National Association of Realtors, NAR. They show that after 9 of the last 11 presidential elections, as you can see, home sales went up the next year. And you'll see on here, the election year is in blue, and then the home sales, or excuse me, the year right after is what happened, is how the housing market reacted to that presidential election. So we had 2 times where the housing sales went lower after a presidential election, but 9 out of the last 11 presidential elections, we saw annual existing home sales increase after a presidential election. So you might be saying, okay, so home sales increase, but what about home prices? How much am I going to take a hit on the sale of my home, or am I going to be able to see an increase in home sales? And as if I'm buying, is it going to raise home prices, or am I going to maybe be able to get a deal on something? Do they drop during election years? Well, not typically. An election year doesn't alter the price trend that is already happening in the market. So home prices are pretty resilient. They generally rise year after year, regardless of elections. The latest data from NAR, the National Association of Realtors, shows that after 7 of the last 8 presidential elections, home prices increased that following year. And you can see this on that graph. And we only have one where we had any issues. So just like the previous graph, this shows the election years in blue. The only year when prices declined after an election is in orange. And that was during the housing market crash, which was far from a typical year. So today's market is a lot different than it was back then. And you see all the green bars represent when prices rose the following year. So if you're worried about your home losing value because of an election, you can rest easy knowing prices rise after most presidential elections. So mortgage rates. Another important thing to consider, we just talked about it at the last video. So mortgage rates are important because they affect how much your monthly payment will be when you buy a home, obviously. So looking at the last 11 presidential elections, the years of those presidential elections, data from Freddie Mac shows that mortgage rates decrease from July to November in 8 of those presidential elections. So we see the decrease leading up to 8 of the last presidential elections. And so we saw a slight increase, what was 1980, 1992, and 2016. Most forecasters, I should say, expect mortgage rates to ease slightly throughout the remainder of the year. And if they're right, this year will follow the trend of declining in mortgage rates leading up to most previous elections. And if you're looking to buy a home in the coming months, this could be good news, as lower rates could mean a lower monthly payment. And if you're looking to sell your home, what we also know is when mortgage rates come down, those buyers that are sitting on the sidelines waiting and thinking they're going to time the market, they jump in, full bore. And so you might have a lot more demand for that property. But as we know, when demand goes up, prices go up as well. So really, what does this mean for you? What's the big takeaway of this? While the presidential elections do have some impact on the housing market, the effect is usually pretty small and temporary. As a chief economist at Bright MLS says, historically, the housing market doesn't tend to look very different in presidential election years compared to other years. So for the most part, buyers and sellers, the elections doesn't have a major impact on your plans. So while it's natural to feel a little uncertain during an election year, history shows that the housing market remains strong and resilient. For help navigating the market in election year, let's connect, let's talk. Please don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe. I'd love to hear from you if you have questions about the Phoenix housing market or other areas in Arizona, because I do cover Payson, Pine, Strawberry, all the Happy Jack, up to Heber, Overguard as well. So if you're looking in those areas, let me know. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.